my whole neighborhood is you who can speak English, who have access to the internet and want to know about Dharma. So I'm happy you're here, and whether it's later or now, doesn't matter. Today we're going to talk about the most amazing topic. And we're really getting into the thick of it here as we're progressing through these foundational teachings of Buddhism. And we're firmly now in the realm of the precious bodhicitta. Bodhicitta. What is that? So, bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word. And remember, the Buddha came from India. And Sanskrit wasn't the language he spoke, but it became the definitive language for religion in India. So all the Buddhist texts that we rely on in my Tibetan tradition that I come from, the Nyingma tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, come from Sanskrit. And the most authoritative texts are the ones that were from India and came from early Buddhism and middle Buddhism into and those wonderful texts and the scholastic and practice traditions that came from them migrated to Tibet and the Himalayan area in general. Look at a map sometime, see where Tibet is. Now it's been subsumed into China, but you can still see it there, clearly differentiated on the map. So, bodhicitta. Bodhi means awakening. So here there's an idea that there's latent qualities in you, that you're not a blank slate. You're not a how can we say it? Where you're not an empty cup waiting to be filled by some enlightened person somewhere, or by a god or a goddess. But instead, within you, you have hidden qualities that are sometimes called Tathagata Garbha. Tathagata Garbha, which means like a Buddha seed. And this is sometimes, they think of it as like a little Buddha in your heart. And what does Buddha mean? It means enlightenment or awakening. Similar to Bodhi, right? Bud. And so, Bodhi is awakening to your hidden qualities, to your hidden enlightenment that has been with you and is with every living being, from an insect on up to an elephant and a human. We have this hidden capability, but because we're humans, we have a way, way better chance of discovering that hidden capability and blossoming it into something wonderful. So there's that Bodhi. We want to wake up. And there's that chitta. I recently learned it's pronounced chitta, not cheetah like we all say, if you're familiar with the teachings in this area. In Sanskrit it's chitta. And so chitta is mind, or you could say a consciousness. And so when you put those two together, you get awakened mind, or a mind that is awakening, in the process of awakening. So what is bodhicitta all about? Well, bodhicitta is like a marriage between two things. And one is loosely compassion, and one is wisdom, speaking more sort of broadly, loosely. And I'm looking here at a wonderful book that I've been using to guide my way through the teaching of bodhicitta, Khenpo Ngaka's book called The Guide to the Words of the Perfect Teacher. And it's very good. So The two aspects of bodhicitta are, point one is you really need to focus on all living beings, like we've been talking about, with equal compassion. And wishing that they'll be free of suffering and all the causes of suffering. And what are the cause of suffering? Well, bottom line, desire is a cause of suffering. And I'm not necessarily referring to the physical sensation of desire arising and passing away. I'm here talking about this craving and wanting and thinking that you can fix your situation by something out there, going what I want, going away from what I don't want, like that. And that is the root of suffering. If that was cut through from the root, which is ultimately our own sense of self, our ego, it's called sometimes, if we cut away that part, that little thing, all suffering is gone. And we want that. If you get a little taste of that, that natural arising of compassion, that compassion is about each sentient being finding their awakening and themselves, totally being freed from suffering. And we want that with all our hearts, that all sentient beings, all living beings will have that freedom from suffering. And how do you get that? By awakening. So the Bodhi, Buddhahood, awakening, enlightenment. Some people don't like the word enlightenment. It's a Western word. A lot of our early vocabulary in Buddhism, as it came to the West in the 19th and early 20th century, the words weren't perfect, and we don't have words in our language for a lot of Buddhist content. I'm most familiar with Tibetan language, which is a Dharma language. It was largely invented, the written language anyway, to translate the words of the Buddha. And of course it was expanded, so now there's newspapers in Tibetan, modern Tibetan, but this classical Tibetan was all about the arrival of the Buddha Dharma in Tibet from India. So what is our second point? Our first point is this compassionate thought that we want all sentient beings to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering, that is the three poisons: desire, aversion, and ignorance. And the underpinning of that, this sense of self, this ego, this misperception of ourself and misperception of phenomena based on our human habit and our past lives habit. So the second aspect or point is to focus on complete enlightenment with wisdom, thinking how to attain the precious level of perfect Buddhahood, which is free from both suffering and the causes of suffering. So how myself am I going to get to a point where I have the wisdom of sort of ultimate truth so that I can help other sentient beings? And do I really understand how sentient beings move from suffering into nirvana, or loosely put, or awakening? If we think, this is a really interesting sentence in this little book, so go with me here as I approach things in the classical Dharma manner for a moment, relying on texts. This is the way Dharma is taught traditionally. So Khenpo Ngakchung says, if we think of freeing sentient beings from suffering without focusing on the wish to attain Buddhahood, then this is only compassion. So compassion is nice. It's a good quality. We should all cultivate it. Secular people can be wonderful, compassionate beings. But it's when we're joined with this wish to attain complete awakening that it becomes bodhicitta. And then if we think of attaining Buddhahood or enlightenment without having focused on suffering, this is only love. So love is the thought of all our people and animals and insects having happiness. That's how the love is wishing. Love means wishing that all sentient beings will be happy. So in a way, you think, oh, if they're going to attain Buddhahood, they'll be happy. But then, me attaining Buddhahood without a focus on suffering, there's only love. So we have to really remember the suffering and samsara and cyclic existence. So we've talked about the definition of that term, I think, the dukkha or dukknel in Tibetan. Suffering is this suffering of change. Isn't it? Isn't all of our suffering about something coming to an end? When we're trying to hold on to it with our grasping, our desire, trying to find a good place to be, a good house to be in, a good relationship to be in, grab onto it, and everything comes to an end. Even from moment to moment, things are constantly arising and coming to an end. So I see a few friends here online with me. I see a thumbs up from somebody over there in the comments section. I got my comments section working again. If it was here last week, I couldn't find it, but found it. So these are fundamental teachings of Buddhism, but it's good to review them. I'm feeling enriched in reviewing them. So there's a feeling that the Bodhisattva, or the sattva means like being, the being who is driven by bodhicitta, or their battery is bodhicitta, is courageous. Really, these a bodhisattva is sort of the very word for somebody who has been exposed to it, is somebody who will go into any kind of situation to help sentient beings without hesitation. All they have their blossom, their compassion, and yet it's intelligent compassion, because you aren't going in just to fix one situation. You may, as a human being, want to go and just get somebody out of a bad situation, but you're always inside. You're always thinking, I want this being to be permanently relieved from suffering. Right? That's what our love, compassion, joy, and equanimity is leading to. A permanent relief. So we take a vow called the Bodhisattva vow. You can do this formally, and it actually is great to do. Some lamas do offer the Bodhisattva vow, and some don't. Sometimes the Dalai Lama will offer that. Maybe he'll do that online this year, if he hasn't done it already. He's on the internet all the time. Where you promise that not only for this lifetime, but for every lifetime forever, you're going to work for the benefit of sentient beings, for their awakening, without discriminating. Right? No discrimination. Animal, human, different kinds of humans, annoying humans, really nice humans. You have to be skillful about how, in the long term, you're going to help these beings. And our wisdom lamas from the Tibetan tradition, lama means like a guru, teacher. What you notice when you're dealing with them for the first time, I think one of the first things people notice is they're not thinking about right now. They're thinking about forever. They're thinking about maybe in this lifetime. This person is in a situation or has everything is not lined up for them to practice and study and attain Buddhahood. But what about you want to plant seeds for future lifetimes? I often think that all those Buddha statues, you may have heard me say this before, but everybody wants a Buddha in their garden. Am I right? And sometimes people have them in their houses, and some people just don't know why. They aren't Buddhists, but it makes them feel peaceful. It makes them feel a little bit of joy to look at, gaze upon these images of the Buddha Shakyamuni, for example. Isn't that wonderful? And I often think that this is something from a past life because there's no explanation for it. Really, he's just some person sitting cross-legged. From the point of view of somebody who's not a Buddhist, who cares? You know, from a point of view of an American who worships the dollar and so forth, we should have somebody running for money, reaching for gold bars or something like that. That would make us feel wonderful to see that on the shelf. And some people may have that. But I feel there's some past life carryover. And this is my theory, and I'm sticking with it. So there's an idea. You take this vow, and you say, forever I'm going to be there for sentient beings. And with courage, you go forth into your life, not giving in to your base instincts. The reptilian brain, the lower part of your consciousness. But always trying to raise yourself up as best you can, starting with an aspiration. May I become a Bodhisattva. May I be that. I don't have those qualities right now, but could I be like the Dalai Lama? Could I be like, Thich Nhat Hanh, Pema Chodron? These are the most famous Bodhisattvas in the world. That's why I'm naming them. Or some other person who's inspired you with their selfless compassion, joined with this deep wisdom of conceptlessness, freedom beyond your ordinary mind, joining that deep wisdom of the non-conceptual with this love, compassion, joy, equanimity, and wish for all sentient beings to be free of suffering. The good way, the best way, which is to meet the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. So before I go to the practice component, I want to say, review the 3 degrees of courage. I hadn't remembered it was put that way, and I was reading from Khenpo Ngondro here that is called the 3 degrees of courage. How much do you have of the good stuff? How much have you built up that reservoir of good heart? Found it. Actually, it was there already, and how much have you unveiled that? So the sort of lowest level is like, okay, I'm going to go to enlightenment. I'm going to go practice and attain enlightenment. But afterwards, I'm going to go rescue everybody. I'm going to go help all living beings. And that's called the king's kind of aspiration, the king's degree of courage, we'll say. So that's viewed as a lesser kind of bodhicitta. And then the second degree is like, well, maybe I can think that we're all going together. We're going to join hands and we're going to go to enlightenment together. And we will, so you help other beings and you think we're all going to, same time, we're going to cross over the river of suffering and enter into complete peace someday, some lifetime. That's called the boatman's way. So that's why I said river. It's like we're going over in a boat all together. And it's also called arousing bodhicitta with sacred wisdom. It's a wonderful thought. Any of these is so sublime beyond 99% of the people in the world never had a single thought like this. Right? They're thinking about themselves, their family. They're good people. They do nice things mostly for their relatives and their own people, for themselves. Right? And that's normal. And there's nothing wrong with that, except it guarantees suffering for everybody concerned. So then, what's the ultimate kind of courage that a bodhisattva has? Well, I'm going to read a little quote here. I think it's from a earlier sacred text. Throughout time without beginning, I've acted out of a desire to achieve my own selfish ends, and as a result, I have wandered until now. Even now, if I continue to do the same, I shall have to go on wandering endlessly. So now, whatever happens to me, I shall first set all beings on the level of perfect Buddhahood, and then after that, whether I attain Buddhahood or not doesn't matter. Whoa. When we think like this, we subdue the demon of our self-centeredness with the precious bodhicitta. The wish for other beings to attain Buddhahood is known as the arising of bodhicitta beyond compare. So this is what we want. This is how we want to be ultimately. Right now, so as I said, you can aspire. I can say, I can't do that right now. I'm not there yet. It's okay. Just say, I want to be that way. I'm aiming towards being that way. And then you begin to jump into the path of the Bodhisattva. And so it's very beautiful. So this is a point where I'm going to say, please like and subscribe. It helps a lot. And then if you're interested in getting together with me and my people online these days, I'm the neighborhood teacher for everybody who speaks English in the world. And but we only have a small group. So take a look at our website, mayummountain.net, and you can sign up for our email list if you want. That's the most up to date. Okay, so let's practice some Tonglen. Tonglen, sending and taking. Sending and taking. I think probably my people here, 5 people, yeah. Maybe you already know, but for the sake of all sentient beings, I'm going to describe a very simple Tonglen process. There are very elaborate ones. Thanks for the thumbs up, people. I see them. So this is working with your breath. And this was a secret practice in India, because very few people were thought to have the courage. But we have the courage, don't we? So what we do is we think about you can divide up sentient beings into different categories. They divide them into 4 different categories. It can be in terms of direction or in terms of closeness to yourself. So what do we want to do today? And also let's start with somebody easy. So this week, you've encountered some kind of suffering person or animal that made your heart go, oh, that's rough. It may have been a dog, it may have been an insect struggling at the end of their life in your bathtub. It may have been something you saw on television. So with that, and this is somebody, it's easy. It's easy to feel compassion for. We all love animals. Most of us do anyway. So bring that image to mind. If it wasn't this week, it could be last week, whatever. And bring in, with your in-breath, a simple, unelaborate in-breath. It doesn't have to be fabricated into something fancy. Bring in all the suffering of that sentient being, the form of like sooty, oily, dense, black, cloud-like substance. So you think of that being, and you are breathing in like a vacuum cleaner, that dark mass of their suffering. And then you're breathing out, and with that, the spacious openness opens up. All the suffering is just dispersed in the vastness of space. Beautiful, like a beautiful blue sky. Let's do that for a while with our easy easy subject. All right. So then let's think of someone or an animal who you feel kind of neutral towards. Just, they're suffering. Maybe you don't know them as well. Or you can think of a group of people. The people in your neighborhood are all suffering from, the ones that are suffering from depression, for example, in your neighborhood. But you don't know them, you don't have any particular connection. But you always know there's people out there who are depressed, right? Or sad, lost someone. Let's do that. Let's breathe with those people in the neighborhood we don't know. There are bodhisattvas who pray to take on the suffering of other living beings. Isn't that amazing? If they see, like they pray to take on the suffering of people in the hospital with COVID-19, right? We've all seen that suffering, right? Isn't that beautiful? Bringing tears to my eyes, thinking, could I please be replaced? Could I replace them? Could I take on that COVID-19 instead of them? Could they be free of suffering? But I'm not asking you to do that. So let's look at then people we really don't like. And our society in America is so divided right now, I'm sure it's not hard for any of you to think of people you don't like. Isn't that too bad? So we live in separate worlds, and we have really different values, and there's a lot of splits, as we all know. So pick somebody who is really hard to love. And usually you'll find that person's really angry, because anger is so hard to take, right? And or something like that. So just find your, pick one. Maybe you have a face. Or if you don't have a face that comes up for you, you can generalize all those people who are like that. The haters or whatever it is, whatever quality. Liberals. Conservatives. whoever you come to just feel a complete aversion to. Oh, here I am, I'm running over again. We'll wrap up with this one. Anyway, think about those people or a person, and identify their suffering, because they aren't that way randomly. It's their karma, habitual tendencies over lifetimes, and the ignorance, complete ignorance of how to stop suffering, how to be happy. So they have no idea. They want to be happy, but instead they're miserable. They're creating misery for other people. So breathe in that suffering. Out. All right, y'all. So that's how one way that we can cultivate the precious bodhicitta. Come back next week and we'll continue to do more. I think we're going to be on this topic for a good long time. Thank you for joining me. And is there anything else? I don't think so. I'll see you next week. You take care now.